Congressman Matt Cartwright, a Democrat from Pennsylvania. He's a member of the Oversight and Government Reform Committee. Representative Cartwright, good to see you. Thanks for joining me. So House Speaker John Boehner also accusing Democrats of making this a political issue. Let's take a listen to what he said this week.
Are you really going to ask such a stupid question? Listen, you know, they started this yesterday. It's all about funding. It's all about funding. Well, obviously, it's not about funding. The train was going twice the speed limit. Adequate funds were there. No money's been cut from rail safety. And the House passed a bill earlier this spring to reauthorize Amtrak and authorize a lot of these programs.
Where does the truth lie?
Well, it's not quite as cut and dried as all of that. In fact, if I could add some texture on some of your earlier discussion, Congress has already authorized what they call positive train control system to be in by the end of the year. The truth is they already have something called automatic train control, and that's what the NTSB and the FRA is insisting be put in place when they put this line back in place. Automatic train control is what they call it, and it's something that is not quite as comprehensive as positive train control, but it would have prevented this tragedy, and it is available now. They're going to put that in on the northbound line. Another thing that's interesting is people say, well, you know, the train engineer wasn't hit by a projectile. They would have known it if he had been, obviously. So how could a projectile have led to this? And the working hypothesis, I think, still holds true that if somebody threw a projectile, other train engineers have said this, if something big and heavy hits the windshield, just the noise, just the shock and surprise alone can disorient the train engineer. Now, this is a train that's coming out of the North Philadelphia station. It's about a 3-mile stretch to get to the curve where the accident happened. And when 188 came north out of that station, the routine practice is for them to open up the throttle to get right up to about 80 miles an hour. And then when you get to the curve, that's when you have to put the brakes on to slow down for the curve. So in other words, the throttle would have been wide open, and then if the engineer got disoriented from the impact of a projectile, he could have forgot to put the brakes on for the curve.
Oh, yeah. Well, think about it. I mean, I don't know if you've ever driven in a car, as I have, where something hit the windshield, and it's incredibly startling. And that was just a little pebble, and there was a break in the glass. I mean, that was frightening for sure. And I was not traveling at, 80+ miles an hour. But let's talk about the investigation as it is just beginning. What can be done to at least address the infrastructure issues? I mean, I know you're talking about the two areas in which they're mandated we're going to have improvements, but infrastructure overall is a huge issue across Amtrak and many other parts of this country.
Well, I want to say I agree a little bit with what Speaker Boehner said about not making an immediate linkage to this. It is a general true statement that the more money you put into infrastructure, the safer the systems are going to be. And that applies for every bit of our American infrastructure, from our roads, from our bridges, to our train systems, to everything. So the more money we're willing to put into these systems, the safer in general they will be. And look, the truth is we have to be grown-ups sometimes. There are those in Congress who start all of their analyses from the preset proposition that they won't increase spending for their beloved 1%ers, and that the only way we can balance the budget is to cut. If you start your analysis from that approach, you're not going to end up with the most intelligent decision in the end. I say you have to, at some point you realize when you grow up, oh, your parents were spending money on the mortgage or the rent payments, and you have to do it too. It's time for everybody in Congress to act like grown-ups now. All
right, well, there's a good point. Let's shift gears to the trade bill here, with this morning leading Republican Congressman Paul Ryan, as well as Senate Majority Leader, also once again expressing their support for all of that, and said that they had the votes to pass this in the chambers. But how do you see this playing out, given little support from Democrats, including yourself, I believe? I mean, and do you think President Obama has overreached on this issue?
It's hard to say. I haven't been doing the whip counts on the PTA, the TPA, but and the TPP. But count me as an opponent of those two items. I tend to favor the TTIP, which is the trade agreement with Europe. And the reason for that is, and I've read the TPP, it's classified information, but I demanded that they bring it to my office. I'm a member of Congress. I have top secret clearance. I read it, and I'm not satisfied with the current form of it. And I think that the main items of interest are protection of American labor and protection of environmental standards. I'm not satisfied that the TPP has what we need in this country. We are leery of this kind of thing after what we saw with NAFTA. And protection of the environment. Look, Alex, these are things that in this country we spent generations working on and refining and fighting over and establishing and setting these standards. And the danger is that when you engage in one of these trade agreements, all of those standards go out the window. Now, I understand that the importance of establishing good trade relations, because that's as good as a good foreign policy, because, you know, if you're doing a lot of trade with another nation, you're much less likely to have to go to war with them. I get that. But I think the larger problem is the abandoning American standards for labor and environment. Those